Yuta Okkotsu is one of the most interesting characters in the series, both from a story perspective and a power perspective, being called someone who's only second to Satoru Gojo in unusual abilities. So let's talk about what those abilities actually are. Reverse Curse Technique allows Yuta to heal himself from losing limbs, entire body parts, poisons, and anything that doesn't one-shot his brain. Reverse Curse Technique being something that he's been able to use since the beginning of the series, with its limits being that it can't heal damage done to the soul, physical injuries only. Reverse Curse Technique also being something that Yuta can output offensively to one-shot curses all the way up to special grade, ironically being the same two traits that make Mahoraga so difficult to kill: constant regeneration and the ability to one-shot cursed spirits. The Black Flash, which Yuta uses in the Volume 0 movie, amps his striking power for one hit to the power of 2.5. This move can't be used intentionally, although successful attempts can be made. Landing the Black Flash puts Yuta in a zone where his body reaches 120% of his potential, making manipulating curse energy for him as easy as breathing air, the duration of this zone being unknown. Rika is a vengeful spirit that fights alongside him and is what Yuta is mainly known for. Rika being able to carry the curse techniques that Yuta copies with his own technique, Mimicry, which he uses to copy the techniques of others. Rika can also fire energy blasts like a Dragon Ball Z character and replenish Yuta's curse energy that he stores inside of her for later use. An entire war being started over Rika in Volume 0 as Suguru wanted to take control of her since, in his own words, she was so powerful that mastering her power would let him wipe out every sorcerer in Japan and all human beings on the planet. Rika's Energy Blast is an ability that's shown during Yuta's fight with Suguru and outlined even further against Uro and Ryu. That being a high output curse energy blast that Yuta can fire directly at his opponents when Rika's fully manifested. I've seen this misinterpreted as Yuta copying Ryu's technique, even though he uses this exact same attack in Volume 0 before even knowing that Ryu existed. The confusion coming from the high output wording in the statement. This has absolutely nothing to do with Ryu, as one, there's no point in time where it's even implied that Yuta has his technique. He used this ability over a year before even meeting him, and Rika was never shown eating any of Ryu's DNA, which was a condition for him copying Uro's curse technique earlier. This statement means exactly what it says. The beam can only be fired when Rika is fully manifested. When she isn't manifested, he can't use it. There is no other implication behind it. The difference between Yuta using the same beam attack against Suguru being that against Suguru, he used a binding vow to surpass the limits of curse energy, and against Ryu, he didn't. It's the exact same attack. The first time it was amped, and the second time it wasn't. The curse techniques that Rika holds for Yuta inside of her body include Inumaki's technique, Curse Speech. Curse Speech lets Yuta do many things to his opponents, from stopping them from moving, crushing them, twisting them beyond recognition, making them explode, and even commanding them to die on the spot. The only way to protect yourself from Curse Speech being to protect both the ears and the brain with Curse Energy. Yuta suffering none of the drawbacks that Inumaki has when using the technique. Uro's technique that lets him bend and shatter space on his opponents is highly underrated. The technique has no name but has many advantages, some of which include being able to bypass the guard of his opponents, redirecting enemy attacks, and causing his enemies to miss by bending the space around them. The technique being something that Yuta gains access to after Rika eats Uro's arm in the Culling Games. Something that needs to be spoken about with Yuta that pops up at least once a month is him not being able to copy the Six Eyes or Gojo's curse technique. This comes up over and over again, so putting it to rest here will get this out of the way. Yuta cannot copy the Six Eyes, since it's something that's inherited at birth. Also, lore-wise, two Six Eyes users can't exist at the same time. Without the Six Eyes, there's no reason to copy Limitless, as the Six Eyes are what makes the technique so effective. Limitless without the Six Eyes would be way harder to control, a massive stamina drain as it even tires out Gojo in the Hidden Inventory arc, and would be far less useful as the Six Eyes are what let Gojo control space on an atomic level, along with them heavily reducing the amount of curse energy that the techniques drain from his overall stamina pool. Yuta has many other abilities that haven't been revealed yet, so they won't be included in this video. Some of these include his domain expansion, which was interrupted when Yuta, Uro, and Ryu activated their domains at the same time, and the many other techniques stored inside of Rika's body that haven't been used at the time of this video, most of which we'll likely see later on. All of these things help to build Yuta into one of the strongest characters in the entire series, despite him only being in his first 2 to 3 years as a student, being a special grade sorcerer at a bare minimum, giving him the ability to wipe out a country entirely on his own, while growing far stronger the more he collects and masters the many abilities of the Jujutsu world. Yuta's most impressive scaling moments happen in Volume 0, where he goes from being a weak high school student to one of the strongest people on the planet in a single volume. Yuta starts training to use Rika's power and goes from getting slapped up by Maki to competing with a semi-grade 1 cursed spirit to challenging and defeating one of the strongest sorcerers in the world, who even said himself that Yuta didn't understand how to use Rika properly at the time of their fight. Yuta's final opponent in the volume, Suguru Geto, being a special grade that was hailed as one of the strongest sorcerers of his generation even during his teen years, who was believed by those around him to have the potential to beat Gojo given enough time in training. Gojo even being confident that Suguru could win an entire war against every sorcerer in Japan almost entirely on his own, which is something that Suguru confirms himself, although with less than favorable odds. Odds that go up to 99% if he defeats Yuta Okkotsu, putting the pressure of saving all of Japan and the entire planet onto Yuta as he defeats one of the strongest enemies that he could have possibly faced at that time in his rookie year. Suguru being a threat to the planet being based on Suguru's plans to wipe out every human being on Earth after defeating Yuta, claiming Rika for himself, and defeating all of Japan's sorcerers. Rika's soul is freed from her vengeful spirit body, and Yuta goes to train with Miguel across the country, growing far stronger over that period of time and regaining his special grade status that was removed when Rika moved on to the afterlife. For the next 140 chapters, the readers are left with nothing on Yuta except the legends that his name created, giving him more build-up than nearly anyone in the entire series for 4 years straight that no one else had. Examples of this even come from Gojo himself, where he states that Yuta and Hikari have the potential to become stronger than him. Todo thinking that Yuta was the only person worth fighting in the exchange event since he wiped out Kyoto single-handedly before he left. The Tokyo squad constantly talking about Yuta's strength, and Gojo having complete faith in Yuta to handle Kenjaku after he was sealed inside of Prison Realm. The special grade title that Yuta regained after his training with Miguel being spoken about when Yuki, another special grade, fights Kenjaku, someone who took over Suguru's body. Special grade sorcerers at a bare minimum being strong enough to wipe out an entire country entirely on their own, which is consistent as they're meant to be able to take out special grade curses easily. Special grade curses at the time of this video having their most impressive feat being Dagon creating an island with his domain expansion, an amount of energy that's less than what would be needed to take out an entire country in one shot. Yuta comes back during the Shibuya Arc where he's tasked with killing Yuji, which isn't his true intention as making a binding vow to end Yuji's life was the only way to get the higher-ups to trust him. His real intentions being to fake Yuji's death a second time and to watch over him and the other students at Gojo's request, a request that Gojo made before he was sealed. Yuta interrupts Naoya's fight with Choso and Yuji, and his aura alone is enough to make Naoya back out of fighting him. This is the same Naoya that saw Gojo and Toji as the ultimate pictures of strength, and saw no other sorcerer as even being worth his consideration, who was even willing to fight Stage 1 Maki after she gained some of Toji's power. Yet Yuta, without Rika summoned, makes him himself. Yuta's aura being something that Yuji compares to Gojo himself. Yuta closes in on Yuji, and a fight between a suppressed Yuta and Yuji, who's fighting for his life, begins. Yuta having so much cursed energy that Yuji can't even track his movements. Yuji gets kicked so hard that it knocks the wind out of him with one attack, and Rika in her weakest base state is too strong for Yuji to do anything against, let alone her full manifestation and a fully powered Yuta who can perform in ways that are similar to, if not better than her, in the Culling Games. The gap between Yuta and Yuji being clearly shown. Yuji wakes up from thinking he was dead and is immediately greeted by Yuta, after which he realizes Yuta suppressed himself and entrusts him with killing him if Sukuna ever goes on another rampage. The Culling Games start, and the main cast is tasked with stopping Kenjaku from recreating the Heian era as a first step to a much larger plan. The Culling Games being Kenjaku turning hundreds if not thousands of people in Japan into sorcerers or awakening them as vessels and having them fight each other for his own interests. Some of these fighters being some of the strongest combatants from their respective eras like Hajime Kashimo, the Angel, Uro, Ryu, Kurorushi, etc. Yuta being charged with taking out Sendai Colony entirely on his own. Once he's there, Yuta intends to end the Culling Games entirely by himself, with his main goal being to gain 400 points, kill Kenjaku, and stop his plans for world domination. By far having one of the most volatile colonies in the series so far, having to face 4 special grade level opponents. Kurorushi, who holds the powers of life and death, Uro, who can bend and shatter space, Ryu, who has the same level of strength no matter how he discharges his curse energy, and Druve, who was strong enough to hold these characters in a free-for-all stalemate. After killing Druve, Yuta's next opponent is Kurorushi. Kurorushi is a special grade cursed spirit that holds the Festering Lifeblade, which controls the powers of life and death, while being able to summon millions of flesh-eating cockroaches that eat their enemies down to the bones themselves, with insects that he can shoot into his opponents that will rip apart their bodies from the inside out. All of this considered, Yuta doesn't even remotely consider Kurorushi as someone he needs to go all out against, and he's more interested in suppressing himself to keep his abilities a secret from Uro and Ryu, who are watching him in the distance. Yuta being confident that he can one-shot Kurorushi with reverse curse technique at any point in time, even refusing to use Rika, aiming to kill him with close combat skills alone. Yuta immediately outsmarts and pressures Kurorushi, whose intent is to kill him, pushing him back with seemingly little effort. Kurorushi summons his millions of flesh-eating cockroaches, which Yuta one-shots with no hesitation, until Kurorushi sends flesh-eating insects inside of Yuta's body and hits him with the Festering Lifeblade, which Uro and Ryu think should be enough to one-shot him, despite him killing someone who had them in a deadlock earlier. Yuta recovering from this with reverse curse technique and one-shotting Kurorushi with offensive reverse curse technique, with a headshot that takes out Kurorushi's body in one strike. This catches the attention of Uro, who attacks Yuta immediately. Uro being someone who can bend space and shatter it on top of her opponents, being able to bypass the guard of her enemies by warping the space around them, along with redirecting attacks at long and close range. Yuta still isn't going all out at this point, as he still needs to collect Uro and Ryu's points, especially considering that he killed Druve and Kurorushi. Yuta now having to find a way to beat 2 special grade level opponents without killing them, otherwise his mission would fail. Figuring out her curse technique with little time and information after a brief conversation with Uro and seeing her abilities firsthand. This is interrupted by Ryu, who hits Yuta with a granite blast that Uro blocks by bending the space around her body. Yuta taking the brunt of the damage and deciding that Ryu is the bigger threat, something that both Uro and Yuta agree on at the same time, with Yuta running straight at Ryu with no hesitation. Ryu is another fighter brought back from the past who can fire curse energy straight from his body. Each blast or discharge that he uses having the exact same strength no matter how he does it, Yuta is able to swap hands with Ryu and comments on his strength, saying that if he's not on guard, he'll take serious damage. This is the same Ryu that 3-shot Rika, hitting her with a punch later on in the fight that she wouldn't have been able to handle even in her strongest form. The same Rika that Yuji couldn't even break free from when in her weakest state. Yet here's Yuta throwing hands with him and surviving, showing how strong he actually is. Yuta takes a curse energy attack to the back and blocks Ryu's granite blast with his bare hands, taking a second granite blast at point blank range right before getting hit by Uro's thin icebreaker. Yuta now reaching his limit, having healed himself at least 6 times since his fight with Kurorushi. Yuta's boundless curse energy finally reaching its limit. Yuta brings out Rika and tells her to give him everything, with her taking his curse energy levels back to fighting shape and giving him access to his mimic curse techniques. The fight now being Yuta and Rika versus Uro versus Ryu. Yuta with his hand-selected curse techniques versus someone who can bend and shatter space, and a long-range opponent that can nuke Yuta several times without tiring out. Although the same conditions still stand. Yuta can't kill his opponents because he needs their points. While he is going harder than he was before, it's clear that Yuta isn't fighting at his max potential because of a few things. Uro and Ryu are never shown using reverse curse technique, so an assumption could be made at this point that they don't have it. This would make curse speeches many options like exploding enemies, crushing them, twisting them, or telling them to die go-to options that could end these fights far quicker than how they actually went. Instead, Yuta uses movement restriction techniques to beat them down to the point of making them give give him their points while they're still alive. Yuta, Uro, and Ryu clash several times and eventually end up in a three-way domain clash that gets interrupted by Kurorushi, who came back to life with parthenogenesis. Yuta eventually gets Uro's curse technique by having Rika eat her arm and finishes off Kurorushi, using Uro's technique later to redirect Ryu's Granite Blast to strike him after having a beam clash with him in which Ryu was slightly stronger. Dhruv, Kurorushi, Uro, and Ryu all being defeated by Yuta despite him not being able to go all out against the latter two, making Yuta someone who's wiped out one of the strongest sorcerers on the planet in his first year as a fighter, someone who controls one of the strongest vengeful spirits of all time, who Yuji can't beat in his most suppressed state ever shown in the series, who can beat 4 special grade opponents without even using his power to its utmost limits. That being said, it's not a secret why Gojo says that Yuta has the potential to surpass him one day, and even entrusts him with watching over all of his students while he's gone, having zero hesitation in trusting Yuta to kill Kenjaku, and seeing him as someone who will become one of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers to ever live. On that same subject, Gojo, as mentioned before, is confident that Yuta will become even stronger than him when reaching his max potential, with Rika herself being so strong that he considered her nearly impossible to exercise on his own, even going as far as to say that when at his best, Yuta is expected to break the limitations of special grade completely, forcing the entire Jujutsu world to rework its power system, something that was also said about Yuji and Todo when reaching their absolute peak years in the future. One of the most controversial things about Yuta is his boundless curse energy. More casual fans of the series thinking that this means infinite, regardless of Yuta saying himself that he can run out, and then running out mid-fight against Uro and Ryu. Boundless in itself is a hyperbolic statement. It is not to be taken literally. Boundless in the context of the story, meaning having such a vast amount that it's seemingly without end, or an amount that far exceeds anything that other characters have seen up until that point. Yuta, when fighting Yuji, directly tells him that he can run out of curse energy, which he actually does when he fights Uro and Ryu. The only examples of actual infinite curse energy being Gojo and Hikari. While Gojo does have a finite amount as outlined by Yuta and Shibuya, the amount that he uses is smaller than his own regeneration rate, so he'll never actually run out, a byproduct of having the 6 eyes. Hikari having 100% infinite curse energy when hitting his jackpot ability for 4 minutes straight. Neither of these being the same as Yuta, who can and will run out if he gets pushed far enough. That is all we have today for Yuta Okkotsu, but there will definitely be more of these in the future. So if you like what you just heard, make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, have a great day, guys.